I escaped my abusive stepfather through a basement window at 13, but the judge at my custody hearing was his college roommate who sent me back until his own daughter secretly recorded him taking bribes for custody cases, and federal marshals arrested him during his weekly poker game. So I finally got justice, and my stepfather got 15 years, while I now help other kids document their abuse in the school library. I ran away when I was 13 and never looked back. My stepfather's punishment room was the basement storage area with concrete floors, no heat, and that musty smell of old boxes. That night, I'd broken his rule about doing homework after 9 p.m. I had a test the next day. I thought I was being careful. My desk lamp was almost off when I felt his hand grab my shoulder. "What part of lights out at 9 don't you understand?" His voice was quiet. That's what always scared me most. He never raised his voice. "I have a chemistry test," I whispered, already knowing it wouldn't matter. "3 days, no food," he said, squeezing my shoulder until I winced. "Maybe then you'll learn to manage your time better." He walked me to the basement and made me watch as he took my textbook and ripped out pages one by one. "Clean that up tomorrow," he said, pushing me down the stairs and locking the door. This wasn't new. What was new was the small window I'd been working on for weeks. I'd been loosening the screws since the day he threw my mom down these same stairs, and she still told the neighbors she tripped. I knew then that nobody was going to help us. I waited until 3 a.m., listening for his breathing machine. Mom would be knocked out on her anxiety meds by now, her own way of coping. I pushed the window frame and felt it give way. Every creak made my heart pound. It was barely wide enough for my body. I pushed through, holding just my school backpack. Inside were clothes, my birth certificate I'd taken from Mom's filing cabinet, and the $280 I'd saved from tutoring kids at the library. Mrs. Tanaka paid me cash and never mentioned the bruises on my arms. I didn't go to any classmate's house since that would be too obvious. Instead, I went to school and found the broken gate behind the gym. I crawled into the equipment shed. I'd hidden a sleeping bag there the week before, just in case. For 2 weeks, I lived like this. I got to school before the janitors, washed up in the athletic locker room, went to all my classes, tutored more kids, found places to sleep. I kept my grades perfect, stayed invisible. Nobody noticed. That's the thing about being the smart, quiet kid. Teachers assume you're fine as long as your homework's turned in. Then came the Amber Alert, my face on everyone's phones during English class. I kept my head down, pretending to read my novel, Missing Child, Possible Abduction. That night, my stepfather was on the local news with his arm around my mother, who looked empty standing next to him. "Please," he said, his voice breaking perfectly. "Please bring our son home. We just want him safe." The same man who dislocated my shoulder, teaching me proper form in Little League. The same man who made our dog sleep outside in winter until it froze to death. The next day was worse. Kids were studying their phones and then scanning faces in the hallway. I wore my hoodie up, ate lunch in the bathroom, kept walking. The librarian, Mrs. Nakamura, caught me dozing in the biography section during my study period. I was tucked behind the tall shelves, but she was reshelving books. I saw it in her face when she recognized me. She didn't say anything, just turned around. I started packing up, ready to run, but she came back. "Kenji," she said softly, "come to my office, please." I followed her, already planning which exit to use. She closed the door and lowered the blinds. "Everyone's looking for you," she said gently. I nodded. "Are you safe at home?" she asked, studying my face. I almost lied. Then slowly, I rolled up my sleeves and showed her the round scars on my forearms from where he put out cigarettes to teach me focus. Then I pulled up my shirt and showed her the belt marks across my back. "There's more," I said quietly, "but you understand." She didn't call my parents. She called social services. Then she let me stay in her office until they came. She gave me her lunch of rice balls and orange slices. First real meal I'd had in days. The social workers took pictures, asked me questions, recorded everything. For once, adults believed me. The detective told me they found my blood on the basement walls from all the times I'd tried to claw my way out. They found the makeshift toilet bucket in the corner. They found my mother's medical records showing dozens of suspicious injuries. They found everything. My stepdad was arrested that same day. Mrs. Nakamura held my hand as we watched them lead him away in handcuffs. The prosecutor said it was an open and shut case, 20 years minimum. The trial date came fast. Mrs. Nakamura sat behind me in the courtroom. My foster parents were there too. Then the judge walked in. My blood turned ice cold. I knew that face. It was in every photo on my stepfather's office wall. His college roommate, his best friend of 30 years. The judge looked directly at me and smiled. "After reviewing the evidence," he began, "I'm ordering immediate family reunification." My legs wouldn't move. The courtroom walls seemed to close in as those words echoed in my head. Family reunification. The judge's smile never wavered as he continued reading from his papers, but all I could hear was static. Mrs. Nakamura shot to her feet behind me. Her voice cut through the fog in my brain as she shouted at the judge. She demanded he recuse himself, her hands gripping the wooden barrier between us. The bailiff moved toward her immediately, his hand already reaching for her arm. The prosecutor scrambled through his paperwork, papers flying everywhere. I watched him pull out a conflict of interest form, his face going pale when he found it blank. The judge leaned back in his chair, completely calm. He explained there was no legal obligation to recuse himself from cases involving friends of friends, just casual acquaintances really, nothing improper about it. I caught movement in my peripheral vision. My stepfather adjusted his tie, straightening it with practiced precision. The corner of his mouth twitched upward for just a second. The courtroom camera probably caught it, but nobody else seemed to notice. My foster mom grabbed my hand under the table. Her whisper barely reached my ears as she promised we would appeal this decision. But the child services officer was already approaching with a thick folder of transition paperwork. Everything had been prepared in advance. Mrs. Nakamura tried to block the aisle, demanding demanding to see the judge in his chambers. Security moved in from both sides. The judge called for order while my stepfather stood up slowly, playing the part of the relieved father perfectly. His eyes never left mine. I had seconds to decide. Make a scene and prove I was the unstable runaway they claimed, or comply peacefully and hope for another chance. The prosecutor caught my eye from across the room. His lips moved silently, forming two words I could read clearly. He was sorry. I chose compliance. As the security officers escorted Mrs. Nakamura back, I leaned close to my foster parents. My whisper was barely audible as I told them to check my library cubby. They looked confused, but nodded. They didn't understand yet, but they would. The bathroom situation came next. I needed guardian permission to use the restroom, but my foster parents were no longer my legal guardians as of 5 minutes ago. The child services officer looked uncomfortable as she explained I would need my stepfather's permission now. He savored every second of that power, making me wait while he finished signing papers. Finally, he nodded and stood to escort me himself. His hand landed on my shoulder in the hallway, fingers finding the exact same pressure points he'd always favored. In the bathroom, he straightened my collar with deliberate slowness. His grip was careful, practiced, the kind that never left marks anyone could photograph. His words were soft as he mentioned how things would be just like old times. Walking back to the courtroom, I spotted a familiar face near the doors. The reporter from our school newspaper, the quiet kid who always ate lunch alone. Our eyes met for just a moment. I mouthed a single word, help. Recognition flashed across his face before he looked away quickly. The child services officer continued reading through the transition requirements. She mentioned the new house my stepfather had purchased, noting the sale of our old home was already in progress. Her voice caught slightly when she read about the finished basement, pre-soundproofed for a music room, according to the paperwork. My stomach turned to lead. The drive to the new house happened in my stepfather's car. Classical music filled the silence between us. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, the same piece he'd played during my punishment nights, turned up loud enough that neighbors never heard anything else. My hands stayed folded in my lap, perfectly still. The new house looked normal from the outside. Suburban, safe. Inside, he gave me the tour with obvious pride. Cameras in every corner, he explained, for my safety after my dangerous runaway attempt. He pulled out his phone to show me the monitoring app. Every room appeared in a neat grid of video feeds. My old room had been recreated with disturbing accuracy. Same furniture, same posters, same everything, except the desk now faced away from the window, and a digital timer sat prominently on top. Study materials would be limited to 1 hour before mandatory lights out, he explained. The door had a new addition too, an automatic lock set to engage at 9 p.m. sharp. A library book fell from my backpack as I set it down. Mrs. Nakamura's business card tumbled out from between the pages. Emergency contact information printed neatly below her name. My stepfather picked it up before I could move, reading it slowly. He pocketed the card while reminding me about the reintegration rules. No outside contact during the adjustment period. I repeated the phone number in my head until it stuck. My mother arrived an hour later. Mrs. Nakamura's sudden shift from quiet observer to fierce protector makes me wonder what she's seen before in her years as a librarian. The way she immediately called social services instead of following protocol suggests she knows something about these situations that goes beyond just. The treatment facility van pulled away as she walked up the driveway. Her movements were sluggish, uncoordinated. Despite the summer heat, she wore long sleeves. A fresh bandage peeked out from under her left cuff. Her pupils were dilated, unfocused. She hugged me in the doorway. Her whisper was slurred but urgent as she begged me not to fight him. Her breath carried the sharp chemical smell of new medication, stronger doses than before. Whatever they'd given her at the facility had broken something inside her. Dinner was already set when we entered the dining room. 3 place settings arranged perfectly. My stepfather insisted on making a toast, raising his water glass high. To our family being whole again, he said. My mother's lips moved along with his words, matching them perfectly. She'd heard this speech before. The phone rang during dessert, the school principal calling about my reintegration plan. My stepfather took the call in the kitchen but spoke loud enough for us to hear. He would drive me to and from school. No after-school activities, no tutoring, not until trust was rebuilt. The principal agreed to everything. I helped clear the table, palming my mother's anxiety medication bottle when she wasn't looking. The label showed a new psychiatrist's name, Dr. Harrison. I recognized it from the country club directory my stepfather kept in his office. Another friend, another connection. My foster parents called after dinner. My stepfather answered on the first ring, his voice warm and reassuring. I was adjusting well, he told them. Just needed some space to process everything. I sat on the stairs, watching him pace the living room with my phone. Every word was perfectly crafted. That night, I tested the windows in my room. The bathroom window had been painted shut, multiple coats ensuring it would never open. Every other window had new locks, the type that required a key. I watched my stepfather add that key to the chain he wore around his neck. When he caught me examining the lock, he smiled. Learned my lesson, he said. No more midnight escapes. The next morning brought news about the school newspaper. The reporter I'd seen at the courthouse had written an article about the trial. His editor culled it, citing legal concerns after a phone call from the judge's office. The reporter's social media posts about it disappeared within hours. I mapped every inch of the new house over those first days. Every door, every window, every possible exit. The basement door had an electronic lock. The garage door opener had been removed from my mother's car. Even the fence gates had new padlocks. It was a sophisticated trap designed to look like a normal family home. If investigators came, they'd find nothing like the old basement, just a nice house with security features. For my safety, of course. The first morning at school, school arrived with military precision. My stepfather walked me through the entrance, his hand firm on my shoulder as he spoke with the security guard. The guard who used to wave at me with a smile now studied my face carefully, nodding as my stepfather explained about my flight risk status. I watched the guard make notes on his clipboard, adding my name to some kind of watch list. The hallways felt different with everyone's eyes tracking my movements. Teachers who never noticed me before now watched from their doorways. My stepfather had made sure everyone knew about the runaway incident. He'd painted himself as the concerned parent dealing with a troubled teen. At my locker, I found a folded piece of paper tucked into the ventilation slot. My hands trembled slightly as I unfolded it, making sure nobody was watching. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was clear. Your story matters. Teacher Alliance. Below it was a simple drawing of a book, the same symbol Mrs. Nakamura used to mark her favorite volumes in the library. I crumpled the note quickly, shoving it deep into my pocket. The cameras my stepfather mentioned weren't just at home. I spotted new security cameras in the hallways, their red lights blinking steadily. Everything was being watched now. My first class brought another surprise. The teacher handed back last week's homework, but something was different. At the bottom, next to my grade, was a parent's signature I didn't recognize. The handwriting was my stepfather's, along with a note praising the teacher for helping with discipline and structure. He was inserting himself into every aspect of my school life. Chemistry class came with its own complications. The teacher announced new lab partnerships for the semester. I found myself paired with Melissa Chen, a quiet girl I'd never really talked to before. She looked up at me with curious eyes and mentioned casually that her dad said I was lucky to have a second chance. Her dad, the judge. The realization hit me like cold water. This wasn't random. Nothing was random anymore. I forced myself to smile and nod, playing the part of the grateful, reformed runaway. Melissa seemed nice enough, unaware of the weight her last name carried in my world. During our lab work, she chatted about normal things. Her piano recital coming up, the family trip they were planning, her dad's poker games with his friends. She mentioned my stepfather's name among the regular players, noting his lucky streak lately. Won custody in the pot, she laughed, not understanding why my hands started shaking as I measured chemicals. Lunchtime meant eating in the cafeteria under supervision. No more hiding in the bathroom or finding quiet corners. I sat at an assigned table, picked at the food my stepfather had packed, and tried to ignore the whispers around me. Everyone knew. Everyone was watching. After school, I waited by the entrance for my stepfather to pick me up. Other kids streamed past, heading to sports practice or club meetings or just hanging out. Those options didn't exist for me anymore. A woman approached while I waited, someone I recognized as one of the library volunteers, Mrs. Tanaka. She walked past without acknowledging me directly, but her words carried clearly as she spoke into her phone about how her husband didn't want any association with controversy, how they couldn't continue the tutoring arrangement, how some situations were just too complicated. Another door closing. The ride home was silent, except for classical music. At the house, I found my mother in the kitchen, staring blankly at the wall. An appointment card sat on the counter. Family reconciliation specialist. Daily sessions now. The medication bottles lined up beside it told their own story. Triple the normal dosage, from what I could tell. I spent the evening at my desk, the timer counting down my study hour. The work was easy, but my mind kept wandering. When the timer hit 0, the door lock engaged with an electronic click. 9 p.m. exactly. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling camera's red light, and tried to plan. The next day brought computer class, a rare opportunity. While working on an assignment, I managed to access my cloud storage. Hidden among old school projects was a file I'd almost forgotten about, a video labeled "Just in Case." I clicked play with the volume muted. My mother's face filled the screen, bruised, swollen, but more alert than I'd seen her in years. The date stamp showed it was from last year, during one of her brief sober periods. She was documenting injuries, showing bruises, talking directly to the camera. Evidence. Real evidence. I downloaded the file quickly to a flash drive I kept hidden in my calculator case. My stepfather might check my backpack, but he wouldn't think to look inside electronic devices, at least not yet. I deleted the browser history and returned to my assignment, heart racing. The guidance counselor pulled me from my next class. Mandatory sessions, she explained, for my adjustment disorder. We sat in her office while she asked careful questions about how I was settling in, about any feelings of wanting to run away again, about whether I was hurting myself. I knew these notes would go to family court. Every word mattered, so I played stable, talked about being grateful for the second chance, how much better things were now, all while fresh bruises throbbed under my clothes in places that wouldn't show. My stepfather had learned exactly where to grab, where to squeeze, where to hurt, without leaving visible evidence. Back in chemistry class, Melissa mentioned her dad's poker game again. The way she talked about it, casual and careless, gave me ideas. Information was power. I started paying attention to her stories, filing away details about who attended, what they discussed, how her father ran his courthouse. During our lab work, I made a calculated risk. While reaching for equipment, I let my sleeve ride up just enough. The bruises on my forearm were fresh, purple-black, and obvious. Melissa's eyes widened. She started to say something, but stopped. We finished the lab in silence. That evening, my stepfather announced a random safety check. He went through my backpack methodically, checking every pocket, every folder. He found the calculator and examined it carefully. My heart hammered as he turned it over in his hands. But the flash drive was already gone, moved to the inside of my shoe during bathroom break. 3 moves ahead. Always 3 moves ahead. The next morning, Mrs. Nakamura wasn't at school. Word spread quickly through the teacher network. She'd been barred from school property after the courthouse incident. Her position was under review by the school board. Another ally gone. But something else happened that day. The substitute librarian, Ms. Chen, Chen used a particular hand gesture while explaining the checkout system, a subtle movement that meant nothing to most people, but I recognized it. Mrs. Nakamura had taught me that signal during our tutoring sessions, a way to identify safe people. I tested it carefully, using the corresponding gesture while returning a book. Why does Melissa's casual chatter about poker games and family trips feel so carefully placed in conversations? Something about her father pairing us in chemistry isn't sitting right with me. Judges don't usually get involved in class assignments. Ms. Chen's eyes flickered with recognition. She mentioned casually that bibliographies were important for research. The emphasis on certain syllables confirmed it. She was part of the teacher protection network. My mother's medication made her sleep 16 hours a day now. I found her prescription bottles and did the math. Triple the normal dosage of anxiety medication. Enough to keep her docile, compliant, barely functional. The perfect witness who couldn't testify to anything. I faced a choice. Document the over-medication for evidence, or reduce her doses secretly to help her. Saving her might sacrifice my freedom, but watching her fade away was culling something inside me. I chose her. Carefully, I started removing pills, hiding extras, creating a pattern in the medication log that looked like normal consumption. The change was subtle at first. She seemed more alert at dinner, her eyes focused better. My stepfather noticed immediately. He scheduled an emergency appointment with Dr. Harrison to adjust her treatment. The cycle would start again unless I found another way. I suggested a family dinner at a restaurant for her birthday. Public setting, potential witnesses. My stepfather agreed, seeing an opportunity to display his perfect family to the community. He chose an upscale place where he knew people. At the restaurant, I palmed a note I'd written earlier. When our waitress came by, I noticed her small cross necklace. Taking a chance, I slipped her the note while pretending to adjust my napkin. It simply said to call Mrs. Nakamura. She nodded slightly, understanding something in my eyes. The dinner took an unexpected turn when the judge's wife entered for her own birthday celebration. She spotted us and insisted we join tables. Our happy family merged with theirs. I found myself sitting across from Melissa, who kept glancing at my wrists. During dessert, she mentioned seeing bruises during our lab work. The judge and my stepfather exchanged loaded looks across the table. The judge made a comment about kids and their stories, his tone dismissive. The threat was clear to everyone who understood the subtext. Melissa didn't come to school the next day, or the day after. Family emergency, the teacher said, but I knew better. She was being silenced, just like everyone else who tried to help. When she finally returned a week later, she looked exhausted, defeated. She wouldn't make eye contact during chemistry class, but as she slid the periodic table across our shared workspace, I noticed something. Elements were circled in a pattern. When I traced them in order, they spelled out, "Help me too." The realization hit hard. She was trapped by a different kind of abuse. Her father's corruption was its own prison. We were parallel victims in connected cages. Over the following days, I pieced together more information. My stepfather worked at the judge's brother's construction company. Their entire family income depended on that relationship. The web of connections ran deeper than I'd imagined. One morning, I found a business card in my locker. No name, just a phone number, and Federal Building Room 342. The handwriting looked familiar from court documents. The prosecutor hadn't given up entirely, but I was too closely watched to act on it. Every move was monitored, every interaction recorded. The isolation was becoming a weapon against me. My foster father had a heart attack. The stress from the legal battle trying to help me had taken its toll. His church organized meal trains while he recovered. I learned about it from overheard conversations. Another person destroyed by proximity to my situation. During supervised internet time, I managed to post something cryptic on social media. A video of my bedroom showing the window locks. The caption read, "Some prisons have windows." It was deleted within hours, but not before some people screenshotted it. The chemistry lab became my only refuge. During research time, I used the computer to post a similar message on the school forum, this time with a photo attached. The evidence was building, even if slowly. An emergency custody review was scheduled, but the judge's replacement was his golf partner, another friend. The entire local system was compromised. My stepfather prepared for the hearing with confidence. During the review, his mask slipped momentarily. When I tried to speak out of turn, he grabbed my wrist under the table, hard. The bruises would bloom later, but the court reporter noticed. She said nothing, but made eye contact. Small hopes in unexpected places. My mother tried to testify, but the medication made her incoherent. The judge dismissed her as unreliable. I watched her struggle to form words, to help me, and felt my heart break a little more. The foster parents presented their financial records, showing they could provide for me. The judge questioned their motives for wanting someone else's child. The implications were ugly and unfounded. As I left the courtroom, the same court reporter passed me a tissue for my allergies. Inside was a business card. Federal prosecutor. The net was widening, even if slowly. The ruling was predictable. Remain with my stepfather pending further review in 6 months. An eternity in child time. He celebrated by purchasing a new car using my mother's disability payments. The license plate read FAMILY1, a trophy of his victory. That night, he showed me the renovated basement, soundproofed for music practice, he said. We both knew the truth. The punishment room had evolved, become more sophisticated. No evidence for investigators to find. I stopped eating, hoping hospitalization would bring outside oversight. But he forced nutrition shakes, monitoring every sip. Can't have you getting sick on my watch, he said. Even self-harm was controlled now. My chemistry teacher started noticing the bruises during safety checks. She reported it to administration. They told her it was a family matter. Don't interfere. Another door closing. The federal prosecutor needed recorded evidence, but I couldn't wear a wire. My stepfather checked for devices daily, running his hands over my clothes, checking my shoes, examining everything. Circumstantial evidence wasn't enough without a confession or witness. Melissa returned to school different. She moved carefully, like someone walking on glass. During lab, she slid her notebook to me. Inside were documents, photos, evidence of her father's corruption. She'd been collecting it, planning to expose both men together, but the next day, she was gone. Transferred to boarding school, they said. Her rebellion crushed like mine. The opportunity lost, or so I thought. The school janitor approached me after hours. He handed me an envelope, explaining that Melissa had given it to him before leaving. Asked him to wait 1 week before delivering it. Inside was a flash drive. I hid it in the one place my stepfather's toxic masculinity prevented him from searching. My mother's tampon box in the bathroom. She was too medicated to need them anyway. The evidence waited there while I planned the next move. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. During one of my mother's brief lucid moments, I convinced her she needed tampons from the store. The specific store where Mrs. Nakamura shopped. It was a long shot, but desperation made me creative. What happened next changed everything. Federal marshals arrested the judge during his family dinner. The corruption charges were specific and damning, taking bribes for custody rulings. Melissa's evidence had found its way to the right hands. My stepfather realized what was coming. I watched him burn documents in the fireplace, maintaining his concerned father act even as his world crumbled. The house of cards was falling. A new judge was appointed from a different district, no local connections, known for child advocacy. An emergency hearing was scheduled. My stepfather had 3 days to prepare, and I knew what that meant. 3 days of escalating control, desperate moves, final attempts to maintain power. But something had shifted. The story was bigger than just us now. Federal prosecutors were involved. Media attention was growing. The small family court hearing had become something else entirely. The net was closing, and my stepfather's confident facade was finally cracking. The school janitor found me during lunch the next day. He pressed something into my hand while pretending to sweep nearby. A flash drive wrapped in tissue paper. His eyes darted nervously as he whispered that Melissa had given it to him before leaving. Told him to wait exactly 1 week. Today was day 7. I slipped it into my shoe immediately, feeling the small plastic edge dig into my heel. Whatever was on there, Melissa had risked everything to get it to me. The rest of the day crawled by with agonizing slowness. My stepfather picked me up as usual, classical music filling the car. At home, I waited until he was in his office before retrieving the drive. The bathroom was my only option. I locked the door and sat on the closed toilet lid, knowing I had maybe 5 minutes before he'd come looking. The files opened slowly on my phone. Screenshots of text messages, audio recordings, bank statements. My hands shook as I scrolled through conversation after conversation between the judge and various parents. Custody cases decided before hearings even began. Prices negotiated like business transactions. $10,000 for the Yamamoto case stood out clearly. I heard footsteps approaching. Quickly, I ejected the drive and dropped it into my mother's tampon box under the sink, the one place his toxic masculinity guaranteed he'd never search. My phone went back in my pocket just as he knocked. The next morning brought an unexpected development. My mother seemed more alert at breakfast, her eyes actually focusing on my face. The medication reduction was working, but my stepfather noticed too. He mentioned calling Dr. Harrison for an emergency appointment that afternoon. Chemistry class felt different without Melissa. Her empty seat served as a constant reminder of what happened to people who tried to help. The substitute teacher assigned me a new lab partner, but I worked mostly alone, keeping my head down. During computer time, I managed to access an anonymous email account. The federal prosecutor's business card burned in my memory. Room 342. I typed carefully, aware of the monitoring software on school computers. Just 3 words: evidence available, urgent. The response came within minutes, a single line with instructions for a dead drop. The location made me pause. The grocery store where Mrs. Nakamura shopped, where my mother would need to buy tampons. That evening, I watched my stepfather pour my mother's pills, counting each one carefully. His suspicion was growing. When he left the room, I quickly swapped several pills for similar-looking vitamins I'd been collecting. The deception wouldn't last long, but I only needed 1 more day. I suggested we needed groceries, specifically mentioning items from my mother's preferred store. My stepfather's eyes narrowed slightly, but he agreed. Public errands were good for maintaining appearances. At the store, I convinced my mother she needed feminine products while my stepfather waited in the car. Inside, I moved quickly. The flash drive went into a Gap gift card envelope, sealed and placed behind the organic pasta on aisle 7, exactly as instructed. Mrs. Nakamura appeared at the end of the aisle. We didn't acknowledge each other, but I saw her hand brush the shelf where I'd left the envelope. By the time my mother and I returned to the car, the evidence was gone. 3 days passed in tense silence. My stepfather's paranoia escalated. He installed new locks on interior doors, checked my shoes before and after school, even examined the seams of my backpack with a flashlight. Then everything accelerated. Federal marshals surrounded the judge's house during his weekly poker game. The arrest happened during dinner, his wife screaming as they led him away in handcuffs. The local news covered it breathlessly. Judicial corruption, federal investigation, multiple victims coming forward. My stepfather watched the coverage with his jaw clenched. He made phone calls that went unanswered, paced the house like a caged animal. I stayed quiet, invisible, waiting. The next morning, he destroyed more documents. The fireplace blazed despite the warm weather. Financial records, photographs, anything connecting him to the judge's network. I memorized what I could see before it turned to ash. A new judge was appointed from 3 counties away. No local connections, no country club memberships, no poker games. The emergency hearing was scheduled for that Friday. My stepfather's preparation took on a desperate quality. He drilled me on what to say, how to act, where to look. His grip on my shoulder left fresh bruises as he emphasized each point. But something had shifted. The fear in his eyes was new. The courtroom looked different this time. Federal prosecutors sat alongside the local team. Child advocates filled the gallery. Media representatives occupied the back rows. The small family matter had become something larger. My mother testified first. The prosecutors had arranged for medical evaluation, adjusting her medications under proper supervision. She spoke haltingly but clearly, describing years of control and escalating violence. Her voice cracked when she described finding me in the basement, bloody from trying to claw through concrete. The court reporter from our first hearing took the stand next. She documented everything. My stepfather grabbing my wrist, the bruises visible during proceedings, the judge's refusal to acknowledge clear evidence. Her testimony was precise, professional, devastating. When they played Melissa's video deposition, the courtroom fell silent. She spoke directly to the camera, describing her father's corruption in detail, how he'd taught her to stay quiet, how she'd recognized the same fear in my eyes, how she'd risked everything to gather evidence because she couldn't watch another kid disappear into the system. My stepfather's lawyer tried to argue circumstantial evidence, tried to paint me as a troubled teen making false accusations, but the medical records spoke louder. X-rays showing old fractures, photographs of cigarette burns, documentation going back years. I testified last. The prosecutor's questions were gentle but thorough. I rolled up my sleeves, showing old scars and new bruises, described the basement punishment room, the forced medication of my mother, the sophisticated trap of the new house. My stepfather lost control when I mentioned the soundproofed basement. He shot to his feet, shouting about ungrateful children and false accusations. His mask finally slipped completely as bailiffs moved to restrain him. Everyone saw the real man underneath. The judge's decision was swift. Immediate removal from custody. Criminal charges recommended. Temporary custody granted to my mother, conditional on continued treatment and supervision. My foster parents offered ongoing support, creating an extended network of safety. They led my stepfather away in handcuffs as federal charges were read. Child endangerment, witness tampering, conspiracy to obstruct justice. The list continued as he disappeared through the courtroom doors. Mrs. Nakamura waited in the hallway. The school board had reinstated her immediately after the judge's arrest. She'd been appointed as my educational advocate during the transition. Her hug was fierce and protective. My mother cried in the car afterward. Real tears, not the medicated haze I'd grown accustomed to. She promised to do better, to be stronger, to get the help she needed. I believed her this time. The foster parents had prepared a room for weekend visits, not because the court required it, but because they'd chosen to remain part of my life. Family by choice, rather than blood or law. 6 months later, I sat in Mrs. Nakamura's library. My grades had recovered. My bruises had faded. My mother attended therapy 3 times a week and hadn't missed a session. My stepfather's trial had ended with a 15-year sentence. Other kids started approaching me, quiet ones with familiar shadows in their eyes. I taught them chemistry during lunch periods, but really, I taught them to document everything, to find their Mrs. Nakamuras, to remember that sometimes escape took multiple attempts. I kept a calculator with a hidden compartment, not for evidence anymore, but for emergency numbers I shared with kids who flinched too easily, kids who wore long sleeves in summer, kids who knew that monsters could wear suits and speak softly. The system had failed me repeatedly, but people hadn't. Mrs. Nakamura, the court reporter, even Melissa, who'd risked her own safety to help a stranger. They'd proven that justice was possible when someone believed you. And sometimes, I'd learned, that person had to be yourself, refusing to give up, refusing to disappear, refusing to let them win. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Dinner was ready. I packed up my books and headed home, to a house with windows that opened, to a family healing slowly but surely, to a life I'd fought to claim. The scared 13-year-old who'd crawled through a basement window felt like a different person, but I carried him with me, a reminder that survival was just the beginning, that real victory came from helping others find their own windows to crawl through. I hope you have a wonderful day filled with much simpler challenges than basement windows and hidden flash drives.